A cup of poison, a cup of antidote. The right one goes to heaven, the wrong one goes to hell. It's a game no one can pass. The mouse chose the left. He screamed and was consumed by the poison.
Bad luck.
Luckily, he still has 2 lives left. This time the rat chose the right side, and by accident, the poison wine took his life again.
Come on.
Now there is only 1 life left. Ender was cursing the game's design.
Levesque, one more time.
It's obvious that the 2 options under the rules are both death. His classmate, well, is intrigued, curious. He asks Ender what he should do. Anderson's eyes turned weird.
Later.
And then, at the giant's puzzled look, the rat jumped straight up into his eyes, the howling of pain from the computer, and the calm look in Ender's eyes. And the calm look in Ender's eyes made his classmate, well, feel cold. He chose to kill the giant guarding the gate. To the terrified Will, Ender just sat in cold blood.
You lose. Choose violence.
The adjutant in the surveillance room was very scared, while the colonel smiled with satisfaction.
He's perfect.
This game that no one has ever passed is specially used by the military to test the attraction of future human demanders. 50 years ago, an alien creature called bugs invaded Earth. The human race was in a crisis of genocide. Luckily, the commander at the time risked everything. He flew a fighter plane and killed the bug mothership. That's how we were able to secure a short period of peace for the human race. For years, the Human Expeditionary Force have been monitoring the bugs from down scenes of light years away, but the information they received was desperate. During this time, the bugs, they've been frantically reinforcing themselves and reproducing. The scale has exceeded the last invasion by tens of times. In order to defend against the next invasion, the international fleet has launched a scouting program because executives believe that children are more likely and integrate complex information more easily than adults. So, a group of highly intelligent children were recruited every day in targeted strategy games, and Anderson was the genius of geniuses. He had perfect strategic instincts, but one day, he had just beaten the school bully. Suddenly, the school told him he was expelled. He was in a state of despair. In the corridor, he encountered the bully's taunts and provocations. Ender could not stand it any longer and finally exploded. He picked up an object on the table and threw it at the bully. And then he kicked at the school bully, who was in pain. This ferocious scene scared his followers into silence. However, Enders didn't know that the expulsion and bullying he experienced were deliberately arranged by the Colonel of the United Fleet. As a recruiter, he had noticed Enders' talent, and now, the way Enders faced the situation made him even more convinced of his own judgment. So he came to Enders' home at night and told him the truth about his dismissal. The Colonel asked Enders why he was so cruel to the defenseless school bully.
I wanted to win all the next ones too.
The Colonel was satisfied with his answer. To the Combat Academy on the space station for the next step in their training. On the way, the Colonel suddenly praised Enders in front of the others.
With any brains at all so far, then that's André Viking.
Apparently, the Colonel's provocation was effective. Enders was isolated by his classmates. Not only was he given a bed in the corner, but also at meals. But Enders had the composure of a man his age. He realized that this was a test from the Colonel. And so, in the course of his training, Enders began to try to communicate with his classmates. And when he found out that the school was deliberately cutting them off from their families, he was willing to be the first to speak out against it. He was punished by the instructor. And also in the question and answer training, they gave the opportunity to other students, trying not to let themselves be in the limelight, to blend in with everyone else, and on these efforts soon won the recognition of the students. On this day, Enders, fresh from training, played a strategy game. His brainwaves would connect to the mice in the game. To pass the giant's test, only one of the 2 drinks could lead to heaven, but it turns out that whatever he chooses, the mice always end up dead. In the end, Enders broke the rules, and he chose the one choice that no one had ever tried before. It was to kill the giant. The deputy thought Enders was too brutal in his heart, but the Colonel thought that breaking the rules was an essential quality for a commander. And so Enders was promoted by the Colonel to the higher ranks of the Fire Lizards, but his new teammates didn't welcome him at all. Captain Aramis, the team leader, felt that the arrival of a rookie like Enders would only slow down the ranking of their team. In the face of Enders' self-introduction, Aramis gave him a rude awakening.
Keep out of the way. Keep on the back of the
Only the only female team member, Lily, she showed kindness to Enders and made it a point to familiarize the newcomer, to familiarize her with the new facility. But Arami, who found out about it, Aramis felt that his authority was being challenged. That day, when the teams were ranked for the trials, Aramis excluded Andrew from the team. He was not allowed to participate in the trials.
You hang back near the gate. Hang back and observe. We don't need you.
However, Not long after the game started, the fire lizards were in trouble. Seeing that Lily was also hit by the stun gun, Ender no longer cared about the threat of the young man. He went straight into the battlefield to save Lily. After analyzing the situation calmly, she decided to pretend to be a corpse. She let Lily push herself into the battlefield. After maneuvering her way through the obstacles, caught two guns in the air, Anders was transformed into an airborne gunman. Watching him take out all his opponents, the colonel in the monitoring room. In the monitoring room, the colonel finally smiled with relief. Finally, the fire lizard team, with the help of Anders, but Aramis, who had been robbed of the limelight. Arami was even more disgusted with Anders. After the game, he went straight to Anders, who was training. By the end of the night, Anders played the mouse game again, but the game took a strange turn. The mouse crawled out of the giant's body. A pile of leaves transformed into a moth, and its dark eyes looked into the eyes of Anders outside the game. The moth was the incarnation of the queen of the box. He seemed to be trying to communicate with Anders. The moth took on the form of Anders' sister and guided him into the ruins of a castle. Here, the mouse took the form of Anders. Then the red carpet turned into a viper and attacked. Before Anders could react, his sister transformed into his tyrannical brother. Anders was so scared that he quit the game, and the deputy who was monitoring all this thought, the game's graphics is definitely a psychological problem for Anders. The colonel was more convinced that there was something wrong with the game itself. At the same time, thousands of light years away from the expeditionary force, there was news of an early agitation of the insects. The colonel realized that Anders' training had to be accelerated, so the next day he approached Anders and he asked him to start building a squad of his own, a team of commanders called the Flying Dragons. And Anderson selected the right man from his former teammates, to join. But what no one expected, the first night the Flying Dragons were formed, they received the results of their first trial battle. The opponents were two old senior teams, Fire Lizard and Jaguar.
Colonel is changing the rule. In a battle with the Formix, there will be no rule.
When Onda led his team to the trial site, the battlefield was empty. Anderson realized the two senior teams should have joined forces. Obviously, they don't have an advantage in numbers. The only way to win was to get to the other team's door. So, he first sent two of his team members into the battlefield as decoys, took out the enemy at the door, and then he tied a rope around Will. He went to the door alone to check the enemy's position, and there was a huge ambush near the door. Anderson and his teammates pulled Will back. He made a bold tactical maneuver. All of them were like nesting dolls, protecting the best teammates. The teammates who stayed at the end acted as propellers, sacrificing themselves to give their teammates momentum. After withstanding a wave of intense gunfire, Anders finally managed to reach the door on the other side. The Flying Dragons fought 1 against 2. They won the final victory.
Don't think he's not ready.
However, Arami, the captain of the Fire Lizards, couldn't stand the humiliation any longer. He found an opportunity to block Anders in the bathroom.
But watch the door.
But Anders was able to control him with a takedown.
You can break your arm.
But Aramis continued to attack him, and when he couldn't take it anymore, Anders kicked him. But then something happened. Aramis survived, but he became disabled for life. He never woke up again. Anders was overwhelmed with remorse. He couldn't continue his training without fear. No matter how much the colonel tried to discourage him, Anders decided to leave.
I quit.
The bugs were about to invade. The survival of the entire human civilization rested on Anders. The colonel had no choice but to return to Earth. He found Anders' sister.
I need you to take a ride with me.
As soon as she met Anders, she hugged him comfortably because he was the only one who knew. In addition to blaming himself, he was more afraid of the bugs. After all, the fate of all mankind was riding on him. He couldn't breathe under the weight of this responsibility.
Just stay here, and we will all be lost.
Under the guidance of his sister, Anders took on the role of commander again. But the colonel didn't take Anders back to the station. But instead of taking Anders back to the station, the colonel took him across thousands of light years to the forward base of the Human Expeditionary Force, a command base on a planet near the reorganization home planet. This is where Anders will complete his final training exams. Inside the base, he accidentally met his former commander, who died with the bug mothership 50 years ago. When he crashed into the mothership, he ejected from his cabin and survived. After so many years of research, the Expeditionary Force has discovered many characteristics of the bugs. The structure of his colony is similar to that of ants. All actions and lives are linked to the queen. So as long as the queen is dealt with, then the entire bug race will die.
Where did they come?
Now the bugs are expanding rapidly. The resources of the home planet are being depleted. It may not be long before they will invade Earth again. Humans must take action first. Then they went to the simulation room. There's a battlefield simulation system here. Not only does it simulate a massive international fleet, a human weapon built at a cost of $700 billion, it can instantly destroy an army of bugs. Andromeda's teammates are waiting for Andromeda. He will command all the troops from his command post. Lily will be in charge of firing the Star Destroyer cannon. The rest of the team will be operating a combat team. The rest of the day, Anders and his teammates underwent intense training in simulated warfare. Under Anders' leadership, they were able to defeat the simulated bug army time and time again, but Anders was too concerned with perfecting his strategic instincts. As the difficulty of the simulation increased, Anders, who cared about every detail, started making mistakes, which led to their first defeat, and that made the former commander very angry. For failure in the final battle, there was no time for him now. The colonel told Anders tomorrow will be his last graduation trial. His dragons will be pitted against an army of bugs operated by the previous commander. If he wins, he'll be able to fight the bugs on a real battlefield. But Anders didn't know that the two men were trying to keep him focused on the battlefield. They were hiding a terrible truth from him.
You're not ready. You're never ready. Go when you're ready enough.
By the next day, Anders and his teammates were preparing in the war room. All of the human executives were there to watch. This time, the battlefield for graduation. The battlefield was near the bug's home planet. But the strange thing is, the bug army is hovering in front of the home planet. They didn't do anything. The team looked at Anders. Anders didn't hesitate. He immediately commanded his ship into battle. First, he commanded a group of wingmen to carry out a suicide attack on the bug mothership, waiting for the bug army to gather to protect the mothership. Then he gave the order to Lily to unleash the fully charged annihilator cannon.
Fire now!
The entire bot army was wiped out by this energy blast. However, before everyone could rejoice, Ender found out from the tail color chart, from the tail color map, a large fleet of bugs hiding near the home planet. And then the bugs came out to destroy the Jagged Panther, but the Jagged Panther needed 90 seconds to recharge. Ender's eyes went cold. He commanded all of his wingmen to use the nesting tactic again. Thousands of wingmen, layer by layer, they are protecting the inner Star Destroyer.
He's abandoning his entire fleet. He's in command. There's no stopping him now.
Anders is going to sacrifice his entire fleet. He will sacrifice the entire fleet for the final push of the Jagged Panther, destroying the bug's home planet in one blow. When all the human ships are destroyed, the Jagged Cannon has finally completed its charge. As the entire star became a dead star, humanity has become the ultimate winner. Ender and his team have been celebrated, but then the simulation showed the hellish scene of the home planet again. This is something that could never be simulated, and that's when the colonel told Anders the truth.
What do you mean we won?
He just wiped out a real civilization. A civilization had been wiped out, but it had brought eternal peace to mankind. Watching the entire human hierarchy applaud for him, Anderson's heart was clenched in a giant hand. He'd always thought it was just a game, and the wingmen he ordered to die were all piloted by humans.
You lied! I've killed an entire species!
But then it dawned on Anders when the bug army hovered in front of the home planet. They were genuinely trying to communicate with the humans. Anders was consumed with regret and remorse because he had destroyed the hope of a civilization with his own hands. As he watched Ender crumble, the colonel had him sedated, and in his dreams, Ender saw them off in the game again, and he realized that he was the queen of the bugs. When he woke up, Anders ignored Lily's advice. He went outside the base, and he realized the scene from his dream was the complex in the distance. Anders went inside the ruins, and here he met the queen of the bugs, who was hiding. Ender did not resist, and the queen didn't hurt him. She wiped the tears from his face. Then she looked at the eggs in front of her, and he realized that, with the extermination of the entire insect race, his life was coming to an end. Perhaps it was out of remorse, or perhaps to atone for his sins. Anders looked at him with determination.
I'll find a new home.
In the end, Ender became the commander of the human fleet. He flew the ship alone with the last of the bugs and sailed out into the great universe in search of a place to call home, and then he would raise a civilization with his own hands.